It's a Monday edition of PFT OT. Now, Chris, I've been carrying this burden for the past 4 weeks. Well, 3 weeks. I went to the beach for 1 week. But PFT OT continued even when PFT Live was on hiatus because we needed some repository for the things that were happening.
Hey,
but we're
good job.
back now.
Way to go.
We're back. You're being sarcastic.
Way to
we're
go.
back at it. And we've got things that we need to elaborate on that we didn't have time to talk about maybe as much as we would like to. And we've got some things we didn't get to today. So this is as jammed of a PFT OT that I can remember. And I could have added several more topics to the list of things to discuss. And let's start with something that we did discuss. Because Odell Beckham Jr. is now in Cleveland. All the talking's over. Forget about the Giants. Forget about his past. What kind of an impact is this guy going to have on an offense that has Baker Mayfield at quarterback, Jarvis Landry, who was great last year in his first season with the Browns, running backs who can get it done, a tight end in David Ngakoue who can be a dangerous weapon in the passing game? What will Odell Beckham Jr. do in this offense, especially in comparison to what he did with a less accomplished Giants offense?
Well, I just think it's almost like when you play the Cleveland Browns, it's going to be pick your poison to a degree. You're going to, what do you defend exactly, right? And I think the biggest impact with Odell Beckham Jr., I expect the stats to be really good, certainly. But everyone knows he's Odell Beckham Jr. He's really special. He's really talented, like we're already hearing from a guy like Baker Mayfield who's saying he's doing things that I've never seen receivers do before, and it's only a week into training camp, okay? So he's going to take, I think, just so much attention to where it's just going to make others thrive, not only Baker Mayfield, but I think Jarvis Landry. Yes, he gets catches. I think his yards per catch will go up, though, because there won't be the focus on him. Odell Beckham Jr. is going to have a lot of double team, two safety looks, or the safety over the top of him, to where now I just go, okay, you got Baker Mayfield who can really throw it and is smart. That run game, this offensive line in Cleveland's very good too. And then you mentioned some of the other weapons to go along with it. That's where I just go, ooh, this is where it can be really special, let alone Odell Beckham Jr. is special himself.
Yeah, and I think the bottom line is you have to figure out how many resources you're going to devote to Odell Beckham Jr. You got 11 guys on defense, and it's up to you to figure how you're going to allocate them. And I assume that Beckham gets doubled, right?
Yes,
He always gets doubled.
Right. Yes.
And so Jarvis Landry's going to have single coverage. Njoku's going to have single coverage. How many guys are you going to have in the box to try to slow down Nick Chubb and then Kareem Hunt and maybe some Duke Johnson sprinkled in there? And then Baker Mayfield is the guy that's making it all happen, the guy who showed us last year the impact he can have with lesser talent than he's going to have now. Look, I don't want the Browns to walk into this buzzsaw of ridiculously high expectations, but when I think about this offense, how can you not have ridiculously high expectations?
I know, right, Mike? And then, think about, this is another guy that I'll say I think is really going to benefit from Odell Beckham Jr. Antonio Callaway, right? The guy, the rookie, should have been first-round pick in the 2018 draft, who had some off-the-field issues but showed promise last year. And he's one of those guys, a little like an Odell Beckham Jr., where if he's one-on-one, you go, ooh, let me take a peek, because he can run by just about anybody. And as you mentioned, Odell Beckham Jr. is going to see double coverage a whole lot. And I think Antonio Callaway can be really the guy that benefits from this ultimately. But I'm so excited to see this, Mike. I'm a fan of Odell Beckham Jr. You know what I think of him as a player. And I just can't say it enough, Mike. And I can't throw names out there, and I really wish I could. But, man, Mike, do I have a lot of big-time coaches and people around the NFL that when Odell was talking about the talk of him being traded and things like that, and I'd have some big-time coaches ask me just in conversation, what are your thoughts on Odell? Man, some of the things that they would follow up and say, he is viewed by some big-time names in the NFL as like one of the most talented receivers to ever be seen in football, and I just hope he can live up to those expectations and we can have fun watching them this year.
Yeah, everything he does is special. What he does to get open, what he does when the ball is anywhere in the vicinity, what he does with the ball after he catches it, like a quick slant and off he goes, shot out of a cannon.
Right.
There's a lot that he can do, and it's going to make it very exciting this year for the Cleveland Browns, even though the expectations may be a little too high, even though Freddie Kitchens a year ago, we never would have pegged him as a guy who was going to be a head coach in 2019, and adversity is going to happen. How will they deal with it? But for now, it looks like it's going to be a potentially special year for the Cleveland Browns. The New Orleans Saints would love to have Odell Beckham Jr., but they have Michael Thomas instead, and he's under contract, and he is holding out in an effort to get a new deal. I was told as of Friday, because I'd heard some rumblings that maybe the Saints were getting exasperated and thinking about trading Michael Thomas. I heard they're actually close. Now, it's not done until it's done. Close doesn't matter. And Chris, my gut feeling is Michael Thomas wants $20 million a year on a 5-year extension. Saints are at about $19 million a year on a 5-year extension. That's $1 million a year on a 5-year deal, $5 million total where they have to close that gap. I'd like to think they can get it closed. But I also look at the Saints and I say, post Drew Brees, is Michael Thomas really a guy who's going to bring $20 million per year of value if you don't have a quarterback like Drew Brees there to deliver the football?
That's a valid question. You know, I think I look at it like this. You know, Michael Thomas, I don't put in the class of like Odell Beckham Jr., Antonio Brown, you know, Mike Evans, DeAndre Hopkins. I think he's the next group of guys. And I know some people disagree with that out there. And within saying that, I still realize he's an awesome football player. Your point's real. I get it. The post-Drew Brees era, certainly. But I think also you can flip that around and look at it the other way and go, well, if we have a guy like Michael Thomas, you know, whoever we bring in post Drew Brees era at least has a chance to succeed. And the other thing too here where Michael Thomas I think has incredible leverage in the situation is, you know, at the wide receiver position, New Orleans isn't extremely talented there. And all the different ways they use Michael Thomas. Not, you know, again, like I said, I don't think he's as talented as Odell and Antonio Brown, but the way Sean Payton uses him and moves him around and has made him such a vital part of the offense now, that's where I think he really has leverage over the football team because he is the go-to guy in the pass offense, and because of his size and physicality, he is a matchup from the slot position, and that's where I think he'll ultimately be able to command that money, Mike.
Yeah, I mean, bottom line is I think they need to find a way to get this done. And, you know, business is business, and they try to, you know, everybody's trying to do the best deal they possibly can. The team wants to pay less. The player wants to get more. It was a surprise holdout. Most of the others we knew were coming. That one just kind of happened. But the Saints and Michael Thomas, they need to get this gap closed. They need to get him into camp. If they want to build on the last 2 seasons and start in the kind of way that's going to make them forget about the NFC Championship game, getting this done will help. There's another holdout in Jacksonville, and Yannick Ngakoue, one of the best young pass rushers in the NFL. He wants a contract on par with Frank Clark, DeMarcus Lawrence, D. Ford. But, you know, the Jaguars had Maurice Jones-Drew 7 years ago, held out, stayed out all of training camp, all of the preseason. They didn't blink. That was the first year Shad Khan owned the team. And will they blink now? Should they blink now? I mean, I think pass rush is a critical position, Chris, and I can understand why Yannick Ngakoue is holding out. I just don't know that the Jaguars are going to feel motivated to do anything about it.
Well, I would think they would be. I mean, it's such an important position. The pass rushers of Yannick Ngakoue's talent are rare, certainly. I mean, I think the first thing I think of here, Mike, is, man, a little like we've talked about with the Dallas Cowboys before, Jacksonville's got a lot of people coming up that are going to have to be paid. I mean, we've talked about Jalen Ramsey, you know, Miles Jack. He's going to be another guy that's going to be paid like the #1 linebacker in football. But I think ultimately, yeah, they're going to have to pay Yannick Ngakoue. I think they will too. I mean, Calais Campbell, he's getting up there in years. This might be his last year with Jacksonville. Who knows where that goes? But I think it's been pretty special to this point. And you could sit there and argue that Yannick Ngakoue has outperformed DeMarcus Lawrence in the short career to this point. So where if DeMarcus Lawrence is $100 million man, then Yannick Ngakoue deserves to be in that conversation too. And I think ultimately within that Seattle defensive scheme and the way they want to play there down in Jacksonville, this is an important position, and I think they'll find some way to get Yannick Ngakoue his cash.
They got with Ngakoue the guy that they thought they were getting in Dante Fowler Jr.
Yeah, right, Mike. Right.
And the reality is you got to pay him at some point. Now they can squat on him for one more year. They can do the franchise tag thing next year, and then pay him like Ford and Clark and Lawrence all got. Although 2 of them had to be traded to get the money they wanted. But you know, look, he's taking a stand, and that August 6th deadline. Important to remember, because for Yannick Ngakoue, if he doesn't show up by then, he doesn't get a 4th year of credit toward free agency. So next year he would be a restricted free agent, not an unrestricted free agent. And that could change the analysis because the Jaguars could squat on him for less, far less than what it would take under the franchise tag. All right, RG3. We don't talk about him much, the backup quarterback in Baltimore, a guy who may ultimately be very important to that team if Lamar Jackson gets injured. RG3 is injured, slammed his hand against a helmet, or his helmet against his hand. It may have been his own helmet. Either way, his hand hit a helmet on Saturday night, and his thumb is broken. Now, he was out at practice on Sunday in gear, catching passes with his left hand, and I like the guy's spirit. I like the fact that he loves football enough to put the pads and the helmet on even when he has a broken thumb. But they're going to be without him reportedly 4 to 8 weeks, Chris. This raises real questions about the depth behind Lamar Jackson.
It definitely does. And I know RG3 has opened up some eyes there in Baltimore, and, he's shown that he's very worthy of being a backup quarterback. And, if he gets his chance, I'd say watch out there in Baltimore, too, if RG3 does become a starting quarterback or gets in there. But you said it, Mike. I mean, man, Lamar Jackson, the style of football which he plays, and all we talk about is, man, can he continue to take the beating and run the ball all that much and do all that? Wow, he goes down with a high ankle sprain or something like that. We're going with Trace McSorley from Penn State, a guy who, I don't think many people really evaluated as a full quarterback. Kind of looking at him as like the Julian Edelman type of guy. Might be a slot receiver. Maybe he goes to safety. Maybe he's a special teams guy. Maybe he's like Taysom Hill in New Orleans. I think he was more looked at as that guy, but now he's going to be forced into a true backup role, and they better be careful with Lamar Jackson because I think they're rolling the dice on a really quality football team with their quarterback situation and having Trace McSorley there right now. But ultimately, Mike, I'll ask you this: what are they? Have we heard a time frame yet for RG3 as far as
4 to 8 weeks?
It's 4 to 8
weeks. Yeah.
All right, that's not terribly concerning.
Well, but you have to have somebody there to distribute reps during the training camp practices. You need somebody to take snaps during preseason games. They're reportedly bringing in Josh Johnson for a visit. And look, Chris, I think the ship has sailed on Colin Kaepernick, but remember it was 2 years ago that the Ravens flirted with the idea of signing Colin Kaepernick. And where would he fit better than in Baltimore?
Yeah, perfection.
With Greg Roman's offense, the brother of Jim Harbaugh. Jim Harbaugh last year raved about how Colin Kaepernick can win multiple championships with an S.
Right.
That would make a ton of sense, but the Ravens passed 2 years ago. I feel like that book is closed for good, and I think the fact that Josh Johnson's name is the first one that came up confirms
says it all.
That no one is thinking about Colin Kaepernick. If the Ravens aren't going to bring him in now with Griffin injured, he's never going to be there or anywhere else.
Yeah, my mind was thinking too, and I don't even know if you said this name, but and you might have, so my fault. But Greg Roman, the old offensive coordinator's there.
Yes,
did you say that?
that?
Okay, sorry. I was thinking of what I was going to say. I wasn't sure. Sorry.
Hey, it's my job to not listen to you. How dare you not listen to me? Listen to this. The Bengals aren't happy with the field conditions. They practiced in Dayton, and this is all part of the NFL's 100th season celebration. A.J. Green tore ligaments in his ankle on that practice field. I've seen different accounts of whether or not it was a result of the field, but the bottom line is the players weren't happy with the field. Tyler Boyd, Bengals receiver, called it terrible. These are quotes to the Cincinnati Enquirer. I couldn't run any routes out there. I'm falling all over the ground. It was bad. It was rocks and pebbles out there. It was something we shouldn't have been on. I'm not trying to say any excuses, but it is what it is. And, Zach Taylor, the coach of the Bengals, said the field was fine. Well, he's the guy who's ultimately responsible for where they practice, so I could understand why he's defending the decision. Bottom line is A.J. Green's injured. I don't know. Would he have been injured if they were practicing in Cincinnati? That doesn't matter. What matters is he's injured, whatever the cause, and now the Bengals have to go forward with Green gone, reportedly 6 to 8 weeks. John Ross has a hamstring injury, and this is just that thing that whatever optimism you can conjure for any team, that bubble pops once guys start getting injured, Chris.
Well, yes, and for one player to make a comment about the field, that's enough right there. I mean, it's just enough. This is a guy he's not looking to make excuses for training camp practice number 3. Like, it's not like there's nothing. Tyler Boyd's a hell of a football player. He's one of the go-to targets for the Cincinnati Bengals. He doesn't want to say comments like that. He's being honest, and it's just a shame that here we are in 2019, the NFL making $20 billion a year, that we're going to do this to players and even have this a thought or the fact that this is a conversation, to me, it's embarrassing. It really is. And I just don't get it at all, to where how you're going to put professional athletes who you've invested all this money into already, and then you're not going to invest, a few $100,000 or maybe just $100,000 to make sure that these big investments can practice on the proper fields and really improve their craft.
Don't go to Dayton.
Yes, right.
You have facilities that host your practices all the time. They are kept in pristine condition. This is a comment. This theory may resurface from time to time over the next few weeks, but this whole 100 season thing, the way the NFL's handled it, just feels a little clumsy to me. It feels a little scattershot. And I think they're prioritizing the wrong things. Who cares about taking the Cincinnati Bengals to Dayton because there once was a team in Dayton that played in the NFL? Who cares? And if you're going to do it, then spend the money to make sure the practice field is fully and totally acceptable and can never be accused of being subpar by Tyler Boyd or anyone else. All right, one more topic before we wrap it up. Mike Daniels, a surprise cut last week by the Green Bay Packers. He said that plenty of teams were interested. He ultimately signed a one-year deal with the Detroit Lions. He's going to make more this year in Detroit than he would have made with the Packers. That surprised me because I thought the Packers would have traded him if there was anybody out there willing to pay him more than what the Packers were supposed to pay. And Daniels says he picked the Lions because he wants to play for Matt Patricia. And that may come as a shock to the members of the Detroit media that think Patricia isn't a very good coach because, God forbid, he does things differently than the way they've been doing them for decades in Detroit. Spoiler alert, they haven't worked. But Matt Patricia, he comes from that Belichick line. He's a guy who is respected by players, and he's trying to build a culture of guys who want to be there. Yes. Here's Mike Daniels, a guy who wants to be there.
Wants to be there, and like you've heard me say about Bill Belichick, Matt Patricia, they have great ways about them. They're not the people we see just behind the microphone when it's time for the press conference. A lot more player-friendly than people, I think, might realize up in New England with Bill Belichick. And Matt Patricia the same way. Great communicator, the kind of guy that, for lack of a better phrase, can get like defensive guys to eat out of his hand because, they trust him. Oh, coach always leads us in the right way. I mean, he's just an awesome person in my experience, and he is brilliant. And of course, coming from New England and the things he's been taught there by Belichick and all the different schemes they run on the defensive side, to a guy like Mike Daniels, he probably looks at it and goes, wait, okay, I get to go with a guy who's worked with Belichick, who I know is an awesome defensive mind himself, and man, they're going to let me do all these different things along the defensive line. It's like a receiver going to a Sean McVay passing offense or a Josh McDaniels passing offense, whatever it may, Sean Payton, whoever it is. He looks at this and goes, I'm going to get off for Matt Patricia because he's going to move me all around, and I'm going to show him all my different type of talents, and it's only going to increase my value, and I can get that aspect of it.
Yeah, I agree with you completely there. And the thing about Matt Patricia, and I think that as time goes by, players who are already there, they're either going to adapt or they're going to be gone.
Yeah, right.
He's trying to change culture, bottom line.
Yep.
And for a team that has been bad for so long, the fans should welcome it, the media should welcome it, the players should welcome it, the entire organization should welcome it. People get so set in their ways, and they don't like anyone who comes in with a challenge to the way that they are used to doing things because that threatens them. And I think that it's going to take some time to work through that. But this Mike Daniels, this could be kind of the tipping point where it starts to go in the Lions' direction. That's one of those teams that we're not paying attention to.
Definitely.
And there's always that team that we don't pay attention to that ends up surprising everyone. Chris, it could be the Lions this year.
It definitely could be. I mean, the NFC North is so good, and I think we said this a few times during the spring where, right now, I think a lot of people would have a lot of different rankings for the NFC North if we went through it. That's how good the division is. There's good quarterback play. There's good coaches. There's good talent on the field. I mean, right now, I don't know, how would you stack them up? I can't even believe I'm going to say this, but I'm going to go Bears 1, Packers 2, Vikings 3, Lions 4, and I can't believe I'm saying Lions 4 because there is a lot of quality players on the team along with good coaching, so it's tight there.
I'd order them the same way, but here's the reality.
Yeah.
I think any of them can win it.
Yeah, right.
There's always a division like this where the final order, any combination is entirely possible. Yeah. Now, envisioning the Bears in fourth place seems like a bit of a stretch, but hey, if the Lions really do step up, if the Vikings have addressed their weaknesses this year, if the Packers thrive under Matt LaFleur and Aaron Rodgers, all it takes is a little bit of a hiccup in Chicago, a little bit of a backslide, and they are going to be at the bottom of that division. So NFC North top to bottom, one of the most competitive divisions in football right now, very good quarterbacks top to bottom, and very good teams top to bottom, and any of them could end up in fourth place. I agree with you.
Yeah.
It's got to make you nervous if you're a fan of any of those four teams. Your team's going to be in last place.
I mean, you said it right, Mike. I mean, yeah, you get off to a slow start of the season, and then, oh, gosh, now we got to get into division play, and man, we're the Chicago Bears, and Aaron Rodgers pulled off fourth quarter magic, and damn, then we outplayed the Lions the next week, but Matt Stafford then pulled fourth quarter magic on us, and all of a sudden you're a team that had high aspirations, and you're going, damn, we're 3-4, or we're 2-5, and yeah, it's the NFL. That's how close it is, and it's 2 or 3 plays can change the whole outlook of a season, and the NFC North I think is going to be very true to that this year.
Here's the other reality, too. All those teams play the 4 teams from the NFC East, the 4 teams from the AFC West.
Ooh.
I mean, there's a chance that it's going to be 10-6, 9-7, 8-8, 8-8 for those 4 teams.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they're going to beat up on each other,
right?
And then they're going to get beat up on and do some beating up on teams from the NFC East, the Cowboys, the Eagles, the Chargers, the Chiefs from the AFC West. The Broncos are going to be better. The Raiders are going to be probably better.
Yeah.
It could be a tough, rough year, and whoever wins that division could be in great shape to compete in January.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And yeah, within that schedule, like you said, you got to play the NFC East and the AFC West. Maybe it ends up being a division that's so good that only one team gets in the playoffs, and then it allows 3 teams out of the NFC South or one of the other divisions to where it gives them an advantage that way. But that's brutal. AFC West, NFC East, that's a lot of good football teams, let alone the NFC North.
All right, that's all we have time for today. Chris has other things to do. A new episode of Unbuttoned. Is that coming today? Are you back on a Monday schedule?
Not yet.
Monday or Tuesday?
Tuesday, Thursday still right now. I think once we get into the season, we'll get back into 3 podcasts a week. But for now, we're on 2.
Are you working 4 days a week now that we're back up, or do you have to break in? Is it going to be 2 days for one week, then 3 days the next week?
Well, I'm all for that if you'll let me do that. Sure.
Come on, you missed. Hey, I am willing to say I missed you. I know you may not believe that, but I missed you, and I'm glad that we're back.
The text message you sent me on Friday night truly made me believe you missed me, and I missed you as well. It's good to be back in the saddle, and it's going to be an exciting season. Here we go.
All right, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow. Have a great day.